Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This is all my video game pickups for the month of September 2018. In proud tradition, as of late, it's been crazy. I've been all over the place. A lot of cool stuff here, and almost all of it donations in one way or another. So, yeah, only a couple of things I bought, but still a lot of cool stuff. And this is kind of an intense month. Very special item at the end of the video. It's not on the table, but we'll get to that eventually. Some mystery packages, some promotional merchandise, of course, some actual games. But yeah, let's just get on with it. So the first thing first, I was at PAX West in Seattle earlier this month, and of course I'm media, so I got to get access to some stuff. But I got a bunch of freebies over there, so I thought I would just kind of go over some of those. First, let's start over here. You can see my badge. Like I said, I was media. I also got to go to hang out with my my MCN for this channel is Screenwave. So they I went into their party and they hooked me up with this. This is a T-shirt for a game that they have coming out called Eagle Island. There you go. They actually included a Steam key for it on the badge. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to try and power through some of this stuff just because otherwise this will take us a long time. I also got to go to the Bethesda VIP party. So to be fair, Bethesda had this party for 2 days and it was open to the public, but if you were VIP, you'd get like this yellow band and you just skip the line and you get free food and free drinks and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't drink, so basically I just hit up the food and I just hung out. But while I was there, I got a T-shirt because they were giving those out as well. This is for the Bethesda gameplay days in Seattle, and it just basically they just had a whole bunch of trailers and access to early access demos of games like Rage 2 and all sorts of other things that you could play. And then some cases like Fallout 76, you could look at footage and stuff like that. But mostly I just chilled and just kind of socialized and that kind of stuff. So yeah, but cool free shirt out of that. On top of that, I had a meeting with Techland, and I got to play Dying Light Bad Blood when it was still in early access. If you guys haven't seen it, and you probably haven't if you watch this channel, but my other channel, Game Society Pimps, we did this thing where I basically went out there, I played the game, I played an entire session of it, and basically it's a battle royale type of game, which is not really my thing, but it's 12 people, and you fight against each other if you want, or you try to survive, but ultimately at the end of the day, the goal is to be the last person alive and escape on the helicopter. You do that by either being the last person alive or by collecting all of the assets, specifically like zombie samples. Once you have enough of those, you're qualified to leave, and assuming you don't get killed, you can escape. I knew I was gonna lose. I'm like, I'm shit, I'm never gonna be able to do this. I had to get some interesting footage, so that's basically what I was trying to do. So I was just kind of scrounging, avoiding fights, collecting weapons, all that kind of stuff. And the next thing I know, I've collected another sample and it says I'm in first place. And I'm like, holy shit, so I could actually win this in the footage. So I did that, I escaped, I actually successfully won, which was very surprising. But yeah, I had a lot of fun playing that. But just for going in the first place, I got a little swag bag type of thing that included this drawstring bag, a T-shirt right here, Dying Light Bad Blood. Of course, I can't fit into this shirt at all. I can barely fit in the shirt I'm wearing. Ooh, fat jokes. And it also came with a water bottle, cool water bottle. But everybody got that who had a meeting or appointment to go there. The other thing I got for actually winning, they gave me this really cool bag. This was only for people who actually won the session. It's like a cool backpack type of thing, but it actually is a bag that can be folded into multiple ways. So it can function as a duffel bag or a backpack or different types of bags. And yeah, I just thought that was really, really neat. So thank you to the people at Techland. I also got a couple other just random items. I went over to Limited Run Games. I'm sure a lot of you know them. Doug, who runs that, often has limited promotional items just for PAX West. In this case, he had something cool. So I didn't know about this. Shout out to my buddy Kelsey, who just got married. Congratulations. She said, go over and find one of these. And it's this. This is a promo case for the new ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove game based on the Sega Genesis. So it's a Sega Genesis case with promotional artwork and all this stuff, promotional stuff on the inside, like a fake Sega Genesis cartridge that's actually just made out of paper. There is no game to this. It's just, a promo piece because the actual game will be coming out on, I believe, physically on Switch and PS4 through limited run games. This is just, you know, basically a glorified ad and a display piece, but I thought it'd be cool to add that to the collection. So very cool to pick that up. It was exclusive to the convention, so I don't know how many. I think they made 500 of them. I don't know how many are still available, if there are any at all. But they seem to be selling pretty well when I was there. Got a little random wristband thing from Screenwave for buying that. I also got this. It's just a little, you know, promo thing, a pin. Another random pin I found somewhere. Sega gave me some stuff, which was cool. They gave me a couple of Yakuza Kiwami 2 eye patches. I got 3 of them here. Or I think we're gonna do something with these on my other channel on Game Society because we love Yakuza stuff. Team Sonic Racing air freshener. As well as a couple other things. A buddy of mine gave me a Sega employee t-shirt. Now, much like the previous shirt, I simply can't fit into this. I don't know if I'll, the goal is to be able to, I don't know if that'll happen, but either way, it's just a cool little thing. This is an actual employee shirt. Like, they don't sell this one, at least not officially. Sure, you can get white shirts that say Sega on it, but this is actually theirs, you know? They also gave me some other cool stuff. European copies for the PS4 and Xbox One of the Shenmue 1 and 2 re-release. That way I just have additional variants of the game, which I'm very much in favor of. But while that's cool, the other thing they gave me that's really cool is this. This is the Xbox One not for resale promotional copy. This doesn't have as much of a purpose these days. I was actually surprised they did this because they usually just do digital codes for review. But these were actually sent out for review purposes in Europe. It's physical edition. It's the same as the Xbox version. It just has a different case. It's not originally for sale. But they just had a spare one, so they hooked me up. I might be getting a PS4 one at some point, we'll see. But at the moment anyway, here we go, promo Xbox One copy. So thank you very much to the guys over at Sega for that. I also spent a lot of time hanging out with Ryan, the guy who runs Castlemania Games. Check out his website. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know who he is, but he has a bunch of cool stuff for sale. A couple of items he just gave me for free. This is the Retro Fighters NES game controller. I'm sure a lot of you remember that N64 Brawler that happened through Kickstarter and all that. I'm gonna be doing a video on that thing at some point, but in the meantime, this is an earlier project they did. It's the same concept, but specifically for the NES. So it's like an Xbox 360 style controller for the NES. Now, that might sound a lot cooler than it actually is, because when you think about it, the NES only has the D-pad, start, select, and A and B. That's all this has. Despite how many extra buttons you see, they're just repeats of maps. So, or mapped in a repeated fashion. So like the triggers will do the same thing as the actual B and A. Like there's no, it's not like now, oh, okay, I can have new camera angles because there's a second joystick. It doesn't work like that. It's just kind of giving you more options on how you would want to play a game depending on what the game is that might make it more comfortable for you. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing he hooked me up with, and I've been wanting this thing for a while, granted I don't have the box for it, but I'm totally okay with that. This is the pound cable, HDMI cable for the original Xbox. Now there is a Dreamcast version of this, and you guys will be seeing a video on that soon. But there was one for the original Xbox. This seems to be the one that's more sought after because A, it has no competition. There are no other original Xbox HDMI alternatives. And B, from everything I've heard, this one is a lot better than their Dreamcast cable. So yeah, he just had a spare one laying around. No box, obviously. He just like, you can just have the cable. So at some point, I will also be doing a video on this thing. But this is pretty exciting because if I can eliminate having to use component from my TV setup, that's what I want to do. I want to get everything to run through HDMI, and the original Xbox now, in theory anyway, has been solved, but we'll get to that later. So that was everything from PAX and that whole experience. Also, I kind of glossed over something over here at the beginning. I went out to San Francisco for a Ubisoft event, and while I was there, I got contacted by a buddy of mine named Jesse. Now, I've already told this story in a video, even a whole video dedicated to it, and you guys should really watch it. But I did a video about the history of how the Atari Jaguar was turned into dental equipment. That's a real thing, that happened, and I have a mini doc on this channel that came out just the last month about it. I actually I went into Imogen Systems with Jesse, and I met up with a guy named Steve. He's the guy who actually did that. He's the dude who bought the Jaguar molds and turned them into dental equipment. He tells the whole story, shows the original Atari work orders, all that stuff is in the video. Highly recommend checking it out. But if you saw the end of the video, you'll know that Jesse had actually bought a few of the leftover shells, and he was cool enough to hook me up with some. So this is the Imogen version of the Atari Jaguar shell. It is literally just an Atari Jaguar shell they had reprinted. but for the purposes of their specific device. And it was, you know, painted with Imagen on it, says Imagen, and it's very, very cool. I mean, again, this was specifically for dental equipment, but it's exactly the same as the actual Jaguar shell. So if you wanted to swap out the Jaguar shell and put this on, it would most definitely work. So this is just, but I mean, I just kind of got this because, you know, first of all, he just gave it to me, so thank you, Jesse. But I really just kind of wanted it as like a novelty. It's just like so, you know, awesome that that's a thing. So that's one part of it. Now, unfortunately, Steve had no more bottom shells anymore because I couldn't get one. Jesse couldn't get one, but he did have a couple of these laying around, and Jesse gave me one. This is the wall mount that they had designed for this thing. Like once it was finally built, you could dock this on a wall. At one time, a very, very expensive piece of equipment. Now has no real purpose, but in theory, if you had all the pieces, this is what you would mount to the wall, and this is what the dentist would have used to kind of take the camera rig around. So it's got some wall mounts with it. I don't think I'm going to do anything with that. I don't think I'm actually going to put this up on my wall or anything, but definitely just a cool, strange piece of video game and Atari history. So thank you again to Jesse for hooking me up with these, and thank you to Steve for allowing me to film over there. So moving on. I also went to a convention in Newark, New Jersey. Well, technically it was in Secaucus, but while I was there, it's AVGC, Video Game Con. I've been there a guest. This will be my third year in a row being a guest there. This year they brought out Corey Marshall, who's the voice of Ryo Hazuki, and he and I were hanging out a lot. We had a panel. You can actually see the panel. It's on this channel. It was streamed live, but it's still up here. David Crossan, one of the guys who created Classic Game Room, is one of the guys who created this convention. He's a buddy of mine. He was on the panel. And my buddy James Reiner, who's super knowledgeable about Shenmue. All four of us did this panel. James actually hooked me up with something. This is a promo piece of artwork from GameStop for Shenmue 1 and 2. This is just, you know, when you would go into the store and they would have temporary placeholders until the game is out. This is what they put up. This is not like an officially licensed piece of merch from Sega or anything like that. It's just something GameStop did. But, you know, obviously what they do with these things is they just throw them away after the game comes out. So I guess James knew people who work at GameStop and they just gave him a stack of these. So he was cool enough to hold on to one for me. So thank you very much for doing that, James. But now we get to some stuff I actually bought. So the stuff here is a bunch of things I randomly got. So Corey was fun to walk around a convention with because he had never been to one before, and he doesn't really buy stuff. He's like, I'm past that point. I don't really do collecting or anything like that anymore, but it's just kind of interesting to see this stuff. So we walk around, and he's kind of asking me like what I'm looking for and stuff. And I think I kind of lost him because I was like, oh yeah, the thing I'm kind of looking for is RBI Baseball for the Sega 32X. And he's just like, why? And you know, I'm sure maybe if I get a 32X collection, I need that one. You know, like stupid collector logic, right? Like, okay. So after I talk about that and I'm wandering around, I see one table that finally has some 32X stuff, and I look and I don't see that game, but I do see one that catches my eye. I see Darkside. Now Darkside is an interesting case because I've mentioned before, Darkside is actually a PAL exclusive for the Sega 32X. It only came out in Europe, and it's comically expensive. It's like $1,000 game now. It's also annoying because it's region locked and it's stuck at 50 hertz. So essentially, even if you were willing to put down that money, you still couldn't play it without all the proper imported hardware or modded hardware, etc. So it was just like, what a horrible game to try and pursue. So it's one of the few cases where I was like, I would be totally fine getting a reproduction of this game. I don't need a legitimate copy. And Darkside reproductions have been out there for a number of years, and often even in older videos of mine where I mention how expensive Darkside is, people send me links to the repro saying, you're totally wrong, it's totally cheap, not knowing those are reproductions. But again, I was willing to get the reproduction. Now the problem with the reproduction that I've noticed, and I've seen them pop up at various conventions, is first of all, not too many people do 32X reproductions. There's just not enough interest in it. But of the ones that do, most people want around $75 to $100 for the reproduction with a full case and stuff. And I didn't really want to pay that. The other problem is that a lot of people also just use Genesis cartridges because they're much easier and more abundant. And I thought, if you're doing a 32X game, put it on a 32X cartridge. I don't want to see it on a Genesis cartridge. This one almost hit the perfect, you know, trifecta, if you will. It didn't have the manual, so it didn't technically become a trifecta, but it did have a good price on it. It was $55, and I talked the guy down to $50, so I got $5 off, which is better than $75, of course. And then the other thing is, while it still had no manual, because nobody does that, I guess, with this game, he did put it on 32X cartridges. which to me is infinitely better than a Genesis cart because it's a fucking 32X game. It belongs on a 32X cartridge. So there you go. I got Darkside off the list because I'm never getting the official version. This would actually be better too because the ROM hack is also region free and runs at 60 hertz. So it actually runs and plays better. So there you go. It's one of the few instances, again, where I would actually prefer it. Much like Mega Man Wily Wars for the Genesis, the repro's just objectively better, other than the fact that it's not authentic. That's the only other argument to be made. But yeah, so very cool. Walking around, another thing I saw that kind of was awesome is I found a guy selling a bunch of Atari Jaguar games. Now that was cool because you don't see that stuff very often anymore, and if you do, it's usually very expensive. But the problem is that he had this whole big Ziploc bag of games, and apparently he wasn't really willing to separate them. But it was getting down to the end of the convention on the second day, and I kind of approached him and I was just like, you know, maybe are you willing to let me go through and see if I can pick some? And he was like, yeah, all right, fine. So I looked through the bag and I found 2 I needed because there was like 20 games in there. It's not like we're talking a full set. He just had a giant bag of games. He just kind of wanted to sell the entire bag to somebody. But in this case, he was willing to, he changed his mind. He let me buy 2 of them. What I found was Hover Strike and Evolution Dino Dudes. I had done some quick research on these, and they're nothing, you know, it's Jaguar games. For the most part, they're not that great. But in this case, each of these he was like on eBay, it was about $20 in that ballpark, loose cart. And that's what he was asking, but then he said, you know, tell you what, if you buy both, I'll give you it for 30. So it was a nice little discount, and I thought, okay, sure, 30 bucks, and I got 2 more Jaguar games off the list, which, again, you know, if you're in the retro scene, like Jaguar stuff just does not show up that often. And when it does, it's usually very expensive. So this was reasonable to get 2 more games off the list, especially because it's a very short list of games out there. So yeah, again, not that great of games, obviously, but still just cool. So awesome to get that. And then the weirdest deal I got there. I'm walking around with Corey, and he's like, "Is there anything else you're looking for? Like, if you saw it?" And I was like, and it hit me when he said that. Like, I had noticed when they were unpacking, somebody had the BioShock 2 Xbox 360 limited edition, the one that comes with a vinyl record, and I was like, I want that because I want the music. I just want the vinyl record. Like, I've got the game. I've got the game multiple ways. In fact, I've got the Xbox One re-release. Like, I don't need the game. I just want the vinyl record. And so when he said that, it triggered me. So I was like, oh, okay, I got to go find that again. So we found the booth, and I saw it just sitting there. But what was next to it, you know, was this, an Xbox One Kinect. Now, obviously, I have a Kinect. Didn't need this, but I just kind of wanted to go over and make it look like I wasn't just trying to pick this up. So I just kind of, plus honestly, it caught my attention because he had it out, like, prominently. Like, this is the first thing people are going to want is this Kinect. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, that's how it was displayed. And that got my attention. And then the fact that it had a price tag on it for $5. That threw me off too, because I was like, damn, are we already at that point? Like, I remember Kinects being like $100. Like, I know they were never, you know, valuable as far as being useful, but they were expensive. So I was just surprised to see it all the way down to $5. So that was the first thing that got my eye. Then I look over and I take a better look at the BioShock edition. Now, I had done a little looking into it, just again, quick glances at eBay, and they're usually about $90. And his was $70, and I was like, you know, like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I mean, yes, it's a discount, but it's not great. And so the dude comes over and he just sees that I'm looking at these 2 things. He's like, tell you what, if you pick up the BioShock there, I'll just throw the Kinect in. So technically it would have been free, so then you're getting $70 for the 2. And I'm sitting there kind of thinking, like, I don't know if I want to do that. And he was just kind of like, it's the best I can do. And I'm just kind of looking around. Then I noticed something that was, I noticed something that was just my idiocy. I thought it had said $70 on the BioShock thing. No. It said $20. $20 right there, 20. I misread that as a 7 from a distance. And I was like, oh shit, 20 bucks and now he's throwing in the Kinect. So $20 for both of these things. So then it became, wait, what's wrong with it for only $20? And he's like, all right, let me show you. So he's like, all right, he takes this thing off, and he gets down there, takes the lid off, and he's like, all right, so look, you got the record's sealed. It's totally fine, nothing wrong with it. There's a bonus music CD of the same music, also sealed, nothing wrong with it. It even comes with the original, like, art book. This thing's never been touched, it's fine. But as you can see, he gets down to the bottom, there's no game in it, so it's really not worth anything. I'm like, the Xbox 360 version of BioShock 2 ain't worth shit. Hell, I've already got it, and I don't even want it for that reason. So he's like, that's why it's so cheap. And I'm like, I'll do that deal. I will do that deal all day. That is totally done. So yeah, I'm very happy about that because, like I said, this was the only part I actually wanted was the vinyl record. So as a bonus, I got the music CD version, so I have the digital adaptation. Got the art book, which I didn't even really think about. Plus the Kinect, because what the hell? It's not like I needed another Kinect. I have one, but you know, I guess it's good to have a spare, especially a free one. So that's cool. So there you go, for 20 bucks. Those are my pickups right there for that. So moving on. From AVGC. Got some other stuff here. Now, the next item is back from Seattle. This is a mystery box from Megacat Studios. Now, I've talked about them before. They're an indie company that does a lot of like Sega Genesis and NES games. In fact, I believe at the time I make this, they have a Kickstarter going on. I'll put a link in the description. I'll also put a link to their website. You can check them out. I like these guys because they're not just doing like repros and stuff. They're actually making new like NES games and Genesis games that aren't just like quick ROM hacks or whatever. Like they're actually making and developing entirely new games. They do some quality work. So while I was there, I met up with James. He's the guy who runs it. And he just handed me a press kit package and he's like, yeah, go ahead and enjoy. So I actually don't even know what's in this. So let's go ahead and find out right now. I'll cut the label off here, which I feel kind of bad about, but no, I guess I got to do it. I was hoping maybe I could avoid cutting that, but can't. Okay, opening it. It's got, well, first it's got a keychain thing from Megacat Studios, which is cool. And then it's got some sort of envelope. Not really sure what the deal with that is, so let's take a look here. Opening that up. It has, thank you for stopping by to see us at our first PAX West. It's just a thank you card. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, James. And then inside, it's got a game for the Sega Genesis called, I don't think there's anything else in there. Yep, I'll put that down. There's a game inside called Little Medusa for the Sega Genesis. So this is a new game they're developing. Oh, I think he said this is a Legend of Zelda style type of game. I think that was the deal there. But yeah, as you can see, it's got full artwork on the back. It's got a manual. It's got a cartridge. And this is an example of a cartridge that's printed on a Genesis cartridge. These are new cartridges. These are not like old sports cases or anything. Region free too. They have the slot there in case you play it on Japanese Mega Drive, but it'll also work on of course, North American and European, I believe European Mega Drive as well. But yeah, that's very, very cool. New 2018 release, Little Medusa. So yeah, thank you very much to the guys over at Megacat Studios. Thank you, James. But yeah, so that's that. Again, check them out, link in the description. Hopefully support their new Kickstarter. I think again, they have another game called Log Jammers I've talked about before, and they have like this cool like wooden version of that's coming out. I saw it, the craftsmanship on that cartridge is insane. Very, very cool. Moving on. We have an item here that's strange because there's so much I want to say, but there's so much I can't. Just a little promo item for a hat, a game called GTFO. This is going to sound really weird, but I was invited out to Stockholm, Sweden. And that was awesome because I got to actually change planes in Brussels, Belgium. I'd never been to either of these cities or either of these countries even before. I had enough time in Brussels. I had like a 5-hour layover, so I just went into town. I went to like the best waffle place that everyone said. I got that. I checked out the fries, got some photos, whatever. Then went back into the airport. So I had a mini trip to Brussels and then up to Belgium, or up to Stockholm, where I got to do cool things. Like I asked a buddy at Sega who actually is from there, and he's like, oh, you have to go to this place for the best meatballs, and you have to go to this place to have reindeer. I was like, fucking reindeer? He's like, yeah, reindeer. And dudes, reindeer is really good meat. I wouldn't have guessed it because I thought it would be like venison, and venison's gross, but no. Reindeer is really, really good stuff. So highly recommend if you ever get the chance. But anyway, all I'm really allowed to say about this particular thing for me going out there is that I got to play this game called GTFO. That's all I can say at the moment, but they were cool enough to hook me up with a hat for having played it. So thank you to the guys at GTFO. I know I want to talk about more because it sounds like there's a lot to say, but because there is, but I can't. So we'll leave it at that for now. Over here, we have a stack of games. This is also an interesting situation. Towards the end, like literally a week ago at the time I make this, a buddy of mine named Kyle, who lives out in Sacramento, he contacted me and he was just like, hey man, you want to come out to hang out at my place for like a week? Or not a week, a few days, like in a week for a few days. And I was like, I guess so. I got nothing else going on. So he brought me out there, and he, you know, I had a room at his house and just hanging out. We were just playing video games, chatting. You know, it was just fun, just hanging out, but basically just hanging out at your buddy's house who happens to live 2,000 miles from you. So he's also a big time video game collector. And so he had, as any video game collector will tell you, you will inevitably run into a bunch of extra copies of games you don't necessarily need or want. So from time to time when he was going through his collection, he was like, oh yeah, I don't need this. Here, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. And he would just start throwing games at me. So these are the ones that he ended up giving me. First thing up here is just a steelbook for the new Prey game, the one by Bethesda that came out like a year or two ago. So there's that one. That's not the game itself, it's just the steelbook. And then he gave me a couple of PS3 games. This is the King of Fighters 13 for the PS3. I thought I had this for the 360, but it turns out I have King of Fighters 12, so I didn't have King of Fighters 13, so very cool. He also gave me this. This is Quantum Theory. He described this as poor man's Gears of War. So I don't know, I hadn't played it, I still haven't, but yeah, that's just what he said. He said it's just poor man's Gears of War. And then he gave me a stack of Japanese PS2 titles. So I'm sorry in advance, I don't know all the names of these. I'll put subtitles if I can. This one is Mobile Suit Gundam Destiny versus Zaft 2 Plus. The Battle of Something 120%. Fate Unlimited Codes. Phase Paradox. Saint Seiya the Hades Chapter Sanctuary. And I have absolutely no idea, it just has a yin and yang in it. That's all I can really tell just by looking at it. But yeah, he just a stack of Japanese PS2 fighting games, plus, but I think Phase Paradox is actually a horror game. I assume they're all pretty playable because Kyle typically only likes to get imports that are very, you know, don't require a knowledge of Japanese, so that would be my assumption there. So thank you very much to Kyle for that. You're gonna hear his name again soon, but for the moment, we're gonna move on here. I have to give a shout out here to Scott the Canadian, because he threw this information at me. So Scott, thank you for doing this. So if you guys haven't seen it, this is just a little slip of paper. It looks uninteresting, basically. It's just the Xbox One cover of Sonic Mania Plus. If you got Sonic Mania Plus for the Switch, the Xbox One, or PS4, the artwork is reversible. It's, or at least it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be reversible with whatever your region is. So if you had the Xbox One version in the States, you reverse it, it's supposed to say Sega Genesis and have Genesis art all over it. Problem is that at least with the Xbox One version, Sega of America, I think it was Sega of America, whoever actually does the publishing or printing of that, kind of screwed up. They ended up being blank. It would have like the Xbox side and then the other side would be blank, and it wasn't supposed to be like that. So there was a website that was doing reprints of this stuff, officially licensed through Sega. They just basically print up, you know, the artwork and just send it to you. All you have to do is like go to the website, give them your address, put in the UPC code, and you know, that's it. They send it to you. I didn't know about it. Scott, the Canadian, knew about it, and he just said, dude, just plug that in and they'll send it right off. And he was right. So there's the Xbox One side, and there's the Sega Genesis side. So yeah, awesome. And I'll just, you know, replace it with the version I've got, and then it'll have the Sega Genesis artwork in there, which is really cool. So thank you, Scott. We got a couple of mystery packages here. Well, not so much mystery package. One of them is a mystery package. One is a mystery package to me. The others I know about. First up though, this one. This is an interesting one. This comes from Brazil. And this one's exciting for a lot of reasons. This is serious nerdery we're about to get into here, guys. So I mentioned before Sega Genesis, obviously, and even the 32X. The Sega CD as well. You guys need to understand that Brazil has a very interesting history with video games because of like their imports and tax laws. You can get new games down there, but they're very prohibitively expensive in a lot of cases. So a lot of the older stuff, particularly from the Sega side of things, is kind of grandfathered into a situation where it's not as, it doesn't really get taxed as heavily. At least that's my understanding of the situation. So as a result, the retro scene down there kind of bloomed in a very different way from the rest of ours. In their case, they just kind of keep it going. As a result, the Sega Master System, which has been out since 1983, is still active there. Gets new content, is still licensed and produced by Sega, or at least in conjunction with Sega's authorization, making it the world's longest running video game console, which is insane. But like I said, there's a whole lot of oddities that come out of Brazil for that reason, and this is certainly one of them. This was sent to me by some guys in Brazil because they put this project together, and it's very fascinating. Basically what happened here is when the Sega Genesis, 32X, and Sega CD were all out, there was a very brief phase where one development studio, I believe it was Digital Pictures, decided to make games that actually require all three. Because you couldn't, I mean, like, you know, there were games that of course required the Sega CD and the Genesis, or there were games that required the Genesis and the 32X, but really no one else tried to decide, let's take the Sega CD and also utilize the power of the 32X and just make one game that's like, does all that, except for Digital Pictures. They did. But in their case, all their games were basically just movie interactive games, like FMV garbage, not good games. And what they did was they released 6 games that used all 3 of those devices. They also released Sega CD versions of all of those 6 games. So, for example, Corpse Killer is probably the best known one. Corpse Killer came out on the Sega CD, but the 32X CD version, all it really did was use the 32X's additional higher color palette for a better picture. That's it. That's really all it did. That's all it did for all 6 of these games. However, of the 6, we only got 5. And one of them, which we got just the Sega CD version, for whatever reason, got the Sega CD 32X version, but only in Brazil. I'm going to show it to you right now because, yeah, you've obviously concluded that's what's in the package. This is an interesting situation because that game is so rare. Like, if I watched Digital Foundry did a video on this, basically saying like that game is so rare and so hard to find. There isn't even like footage of it on the internet. You can't find an ISO dump or anything. At least you couldn't at the time. So these dudes in Brazil actually got together, they found a copy, and they decided to do basically repros of it. Now, this isn't an officially licensed version, this isn't the official original release, but take a look. There it is. This is a reproduction. I want to make that very clear, but in Brazil, this might as well be the official release. And the guys sent it to me. They basically just want to let you know, like, they still have some copies left, but it sounds like they don't intend to do any more. So if you're at all interested in having the rarest, most odd Sega CD 32X release there is, Surgical Strike, go right ahead. Now, I can't read the description, it's in Portuguese, but yeah, Surgical Strike, like I said, this game did exist on the Sega CD, but the 32X version just has the better color and stuff. But yeah, just a very cool reproduction release to see here. New 2017 project is when they released this, but yeah, I'm gonna see if what it looks like on the inside, because I'm just genuinely curious. Yeah, inside it has the disc. Now, to be fair to this game, this version, this is not a CDR. They actually took the time to put this on a pressed disc. This came out of a factory. Looks very nice. It has got, you know, description information. Actually, it's got 2 of them, one in Portuguese and one in English, so that's really cool. In fact, let me take a second here and read this to you. The story surrounding the game Surgical Strike for the Sega 32X. The 32X CD version of Surgical Strike is one of myth and legend. At the time, the information that came to everyone was that the game had been canceled, along with the other titles that were planned to be released in 1996 for the 32X, both in CD and in cartridge form. What was known was that the American version of Surgical Strike for the Sega CD came with a mail-in coupon. If this was sent to a Sega of America with $4, the company would send the 32X CD version, but there is no concrete evidence that some game had ever been sent that way. After years in which it had already been believed that the game had been canceled, reports began to appear that it had already been released and that the release would have happened only in Brazil, to the surprise of us Brazilian collectors of the 32X. In July of 2008, on the Digit Press forum, a user called Classic Gaming asked about the rarity of the title. He claimed to have a copy of it. In August 2008, the same user submits a video proving that the copy is real, leaving 32X fans in a trance. This novelty triggered a frantic search for the game from all collectors of the system, in addition to the birth of several theories. Months later, Classic Gaming updated the site in which he catalogs his collection, including the list of the games Surgical Strike for the 32X CD without box, but with manual of Tectoy. Tectoy is infamous, by the way. They do a lot of strange Brazilian Sega releases. This user in question was one of the biggest video game collectors in Brazil, Norian Munhoz. I probably butchered that. Unfortunately, in 2010, he passed away without any more information about the game being made available. In 2014, a Japanese collector published a photo showing his collection of the 32X CD. In it appeared Surgical Strike and Midnight Raiders, both with box and looking like they had just left the factory. This gave a clue that both were both were reproductions, but no additional information was given by a collector. who did not even confirm that they had owned the original Tectoy games. In April 2015, Tectoy former chairman Stefano Arnhold did many interviews for several websites telling the story of the Tectoy. For the website Sega 16, he said that the game Surgical Strike and Fahrenheit CD32X versions were in fact released here in Brazil, and that together they sold the approximate amount of 500 copies. 32X sold very little in Brazil. The games that still needed the Sega CD to run made the audience even smaller. Tectoy, however, still had access to the Sega library, decided to launch these two 32X CD games in Brazil anyway. Arnhold said that his interview to Sega 16 website, "I can confirm that we have released at least two 32X CD titles," he explains. Fahrenheit 32X CD and Surgical Strike 32X CD. The number before the name is the product code, where 157 means 32X CD. There's a long product list number there. In August of 2015, appeared in the site Sega Brazil scans of the box, manual, and CD of the game, given by Jamil Gustavo, manual of series number 26, it's a long number, that used the nickname of Jamato, or Hamato, I'm guessing. Sometime later, the instructions manual of the game with different serial numbers was found at the Mercado Livre website, which I think is kind of like Brazilian eBay. The seller did not own the game, but he had heard that the only people who had Surgical Strike for 32X CD would have been Norian and Yamato. We then come to this release that you have in your hands. How did RWS Box and VGDB gain access to the game? After Norian's passing, his collection stayed for years at the house of his parents, until one day it began to be sold. RWS Box was able to purchase the game with manual serial number, and then gives the number, and knowing of our search for this lost 32X Grail, notified us about his ownership and invited us to participate in the project of the relaunch, which you today have become a participant. We hope you are as happy to have this game in your hands as we are for being able to share the joy in collectors with around the world. So there you go. There's the full history of this release right there on the paper that it comes with. And of course it has the manual. I mean, again, it's an oddball. Technically, it's not this version. This particular release is not the official release, but having the official release is essentially impossible, as it makes very clear. So if you want it, do it, because when I talked to them, they did imply they're probably not doing another run of it. Though maybe, hopefully, if there's enough people who have interest, maybe this will inspire them. It appears to have come with a poster as well. Yeah, there you go. That's really cool. So thank you to these guys in Brazil for hooking me up with this. Again, I'll put a link in the description to that. But yeah, this is definitely for anybody who has any kind of interest in the Sega CD or the 32X, you have to get this. Vampire Mike, Sega CD Universe, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. I haven't been in your house all the time, you just don't know it. But anyway, yeah, you gotta get that. So thank you very much to those guys. Next up, we have another package here. This one I legit don't know what's in this. This is from my buddy Fox. I see him in Japan when I get to go there. Often, you know, we'll hang out, and I'm probably gonna see him again at some point in the future, relatively soon. But he sent me a mystery package. I have absolutely no idea what's in this. So let's just try to, well, we're gonna open it up and find out as best we can here. One day, I'm going to make this more efficient. Let's see here. Get this tape off of the box and let's rip the bottom. And inside we have a couple of, looks like random items. First thing we have, he sent a blue bag that says PlayStation, Play Everything. And it's a copy of E7, Ease 8, Lacrimosa of Dante? It's an NTSC copy of Ease 8 for the Switch. Thank you. I think he had actually mentioned that at one point. And then this PlayStation bag. He also threw in a thing from Super Rare Games. This is Shelter Generations for the Switch. Super Rare Games is kind of like limited run games, but they're based out of Germany. Thank you. I had no idea that was going to be a thing. A couple of other random items. A Nintendo Switch case just for loose carts. I think he actually told me that he had decided to replace. He was sending this because he had extras or something. I know he likes to kind of keep all of his games consolidated like that. And then another one here that has, yeah, another Nintendo Switch type of case there. Thank you. And a note and bubble wrap, so I just want to make sure there's nothing else there. Okay, good. Put that down there. It says, Hey Adam, it is I, Fox, enclosed here within is a box. I am sending you a pair of Switch games we already discussed, which we must have at some point. I hope this reaches you intact. It did. I am always happy to hunt for you or go on your behalf. If you have any high-value targets, you know where to reach me. Take it easy, Fox. Yes, Fox is a very good friend of mine. He's awesome dude. He's also a big fan of the Metal Jesus crew, and he likes to help them out and find cool things for them. So thank you, Fox, for doing that. I really appreciate it. But he's the dude. If you guys ever saw my like hard off, book off videos, he and I went to the very infamous Top of the Mountain book off or hard off and book off in Yokosuka. That's a good story, but go watch that whole video. Man, we picked up some cool shit. But yeah, we have fun video game hunting over there. But anyway, moving on, we got a couple of last minute things. Now everything else, these couple of items, and then the special big one that you haven't seen yet, all come from the same person. As mentioned before, my buddy Kyle. Now, Kyle he bought something for me. He has a tendency to do this from time to time. He'll buy things for me and then have them sent to me. He's the guy who hooked me up with my FrameMeister a while back, and he occasionally just does that. In this case, he sent me a game. He actually bought this game because he knew I wanted it, but he knew I was struggling to find it, and he managed to pick it up, and then he just sent it my way. So let me just cut into this, I think. Let's see if I can rip it. Okay. Inside of this package, we have Hello Kitty Roller Rescue for the original Xbox. Yes, I now possess a Hello Kitty game for the original Xbox. Thank you very much to Kyle for doing that. So here's the thing, guys. I've said before for a long time, I want to get the full original Xbox set. Now, I have all the Asian stuff. I still have a while to go on the North American stuff, but it's a lot of sports games. It's nothing really hard, like most of the heavy hitters I have. So I've been focusing more on the European stuff, which I'm mostly done with. There was only a couple left. And in some cases, like I have like the game and I have, the case, but not the manual, or in one case I have like the manual, but not the game. You get it, I have like fragments of it. This one, I had nothing. I didn't have the game, I didn't have the case, I didn't have the manual, I didn't have anything. In fact, I really had a hard time even finding it. It's not a particularly expensive game because on the original Xbox very little is, but it's just finding it. And in his case, what he ended up doing is he couldn't find a copy in Europe, specifically the English one. Like sometimes you'll see a German or a French one pop up, but preference would be to have it in English. So he actually found a guy in Australia who had the European UK version, and he bought it from them and had it shipped up to him, and then he repackaged it and sent it to me. But because of that, I now have like the hardest remaining original Xbox game from Europe anyway, that off the list. So thank you very much to Kyle for doing that. Am I going to play this? Probably not, but it's really cool to have it off the list and have it on the shelf and get that much closer to the full set. So thank you, Kyle, for doing that. And the thank yous have only just begun on him because while I was there, one day, like shortly towards the end of the day, he just comes into my room and he's like, hey dude, here, I got something for you. And he just throws this at me. It's a box. It's specifically an HDMI cable. It's a premium HDMI certified blue rigger cable. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the packaging here and we'll take a look at it. But to be honest with you, I didn't really know why he was throwing this at me. He was just like, yeah, it's a good HDMI cable. I figured you could, enjoy it or whatever. And I was like, okay. So let me just get in and we'll take a look at the cable real fast. If I can get past this packaging, which I'm gonna have to break the box, but that's fine because it's a cable. Okay, and rip that. There we go. Yeah, inside is nothing special. I mean, it's a special internally. It's an HDMI 2.0 cable. Very nice cable. He spoke very highly of it, and it's got warranty information and all that kind of stuff on it, which is very, very cool. But yeah, just an HDMI cable, right? So I thought he was just hooking me up with an HDMI cable. The next day, we go to a Best Buy because he's like, hey man, I want to pick up the Xbox One style re-release of Fallout New Vegas for the Xbox 360. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. They just have different cases for them. He's like, I want to pick that up. So I'm sure, whatever. We go to a Best Buy, goes inside, and he finds the game. And then he's like, let's keep browsing. So we just wander around, and he kind of casually leads us over to the TVs. We get over there, and he looks up at this TV. He's like, you like that TV? I was like, yeah, I'm checking it out. I'm like, what is it? It's an LG 55-inch TV, 4K television. I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty cool. He's like, all right, cool. And he calls this girl over. He's like, hey, I want to buy that. I'm buying him a TV. That happened. Kyle bought me a new 55-inch 4K television. And I was like, dude, what? No, like, because that's too much, man. And he's like, no, man, you're not allowed to say no. I got this. And he did it. He bought it and had it shipped to me, you know, in Chicago. It's here now. It's installed. I have a 4K television thanks to him. And again, thanks is not really even the proper word. Like that's a huge thing. So I can't even begin to express the gratitude I feel for that, because, you know, I want to make this very clear. So like you see this table, right? And all this stuff that's on it. I only bought like a small fraction of this. Like I bought the BioShock thing, sort of the Kinect. I mean, it kind of was included. I bought the Dark Side, and you know, I bought the Jaguar games. But like other than that, I didn't buy anything really on this table. And look, you don't. I say this a lot, but this time I really need to emphasize this. You guys don't have to give me things. You don't have to donate things. None of that stuff is necessary. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. It means a lot, but it's not expected. It's not required. And in this case, like that's huge that Kyle did that. He really didn't have to, and I couldn't talk him out of it. That's just who Kyle is. He's a great guy. I mean, all these people are great people. The fact that they did all this shit, but it's, you know, I gotta stress it, like, I'm very, very appreciative, but I don't deserve it. You know, like I don't. It's not required. But thank you to everyone involved. So, you know, thank you to Kyle. Thank you to Scott. Thank you to Fox. Thank you to the guys at the convention. Thank you to James at Megacat Studios. Thank you to other James, my buddy James Reiner. Thank you to Ryan at Castlevania Games. Thank you to my buddy Elliot at Sega. You know, thank you to Doug at Limited Run Games. Thank you to Jesse. Thank you to Ubisoft. Thank you to Bethesda. Thank you to you know, the people at Techland. You know, my buddies over at Screenwave. Thank you. Just thank you. You know, thank you all for watching. But it's just, again, nothing, you don't need to do stuff like that. I appreciate it, I really, really do, but it's not necessary. But thank you to everybody who does. So, and you know, that's it, I guess. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.